Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode. I'm Jack. I'm the founder of Discusions.app. I do a lot of blockchain social media platform research and have a great opportunity to chat with one of my good friends here, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's good to just be able to sit down. And for people who don't know, I'm an editor, or I'm an editor for trybe.one, which is another social platform, and I also do a lot of work with Uplift Nation and a few other projects in the space. So this has actually been a long time coming, Jack.
Awesome.
we've co-hosted a few things together, but we've never actually really got to sit down and get into the stuff that we really are into. So.
Yeah. I remember coming across your article covering all the social media platforms on EOS, and no one has really done that in the past. So it's just really cool because I am on all these different social media blockchain social media platforms. Just because for me, we are building out one, so I want to do my research on how all these different blockchain social media platforms are working. But coming across your article, reading about it, yeah, I think it's super exciting to have someone who is interested in the same field, and we could talk about some of the nuances in this space and how it's developing, especially with a big player like voice looming on the horizon, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of how that kind of article came about, was because everyone was at that time so focused on voice, right?
Yeah.
And well, I'm not on it. Are you?
Uh, so I'm not sure if this is gonna give me legal repercussions, but so technically I'm not in the U.S., but I am a United States citizen, and I try to get into voice through a VPN, just because set my location in the United States, and the twice I tried that, they all failed. So I think they're taking like this location, real world identity thing really serious. Like they actually, it's not just marketing slogan when they say they want real people on the platform. I think they actually mean it, which is which is interesting to say the very least.
Yeah, I guess there's like a lot of hurdles that you have to go through in order to, like, different jurisdictions and how they can prove, right? Like, so like I'm in Asia, like I don't know how you would, go about finding the documentation. You'd have to have translators and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it kind of flattered out, the hype for voice. I'd like to use it. I'm really excited about it. I think it's still, a great idea. But
Yeah.
that's kind of how that article came about. Is like there's all these other great platforms on EOS, and so yeah, like you and I guess we've been kind of dabbling in the same space for a while, but we probably, read each other's posts and saw each other on various, different platforms, but we never really, met until, just recently. So I'm just curious, like, I know you're on Discussions. I've seen some of your posts on Chirp. I know you post on Trybe a little bit. What other platforms are you a big user of in the EOS space?
Well, I wouldn't. I use these platforms kind of as my announcement channels, just kind of way to kind of help build the backlinks into discussions a little bit. So in terms of actual platforms, social media, uh, blockchain social media platforms, the big one I'm using right now is Commune, and they're really interesting. I think they really took the vision of what Steam was supposed to be, and the next iteration of it, which is Smart Media Token, they actually built that out. So that's a platform I'm keeping very close eyes on. Um, but obviously, Steam, I go on there from time to time. Hive, which is like the fork that came out of Steam. And I think that's about it. Like PublishOX, Minds, those platforms, I pretty much just go post um, our weekly episodes. So like the Alpha Discussions podcast that we have. I'm not a huge user of any of them if I'm honest. So yeah.
Yeah, so to be honest, like I don't really even like social media. I mean, I got out of it, like Facebook, Twitter, all those things. I didn't
Mhm.
really like it until I kind of got into crypto
Yeah.
and started using it myself. But yeah, maybe similar to me, like a lot of the platforms that I use to, post articles that
Yeah.
I've written on Tribe. But I do, I do appear now and again on Discussions. I like what you guys are doing over there. I mean, I think from a like I think there's all these various platforms that are kind of trying to achieve something different. I think like they each kind of have different values. So um, yeah, like I think there's a lot of overlap in posts that we can see on various platforms, but I think they're focused on different things. So yeah, I think it's just too many choices, really.
And one of the biggest issues that building a social media platform have, and I think this is an experience you and I both share, is to convince these projects to post on your platform and
Yeah.
you also get engagements from them. Like right now, I think all the blockchain social media platform is just one more place you have to manage, and that's not a good position to be in. Right, convincing someone to post on discussions like, "I'll post your project update here." It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to post on Medium. I'm gonna have to post on Twitter, Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, Steam, Hive, Minds. You know, it's like a long list of places you have to go post, and you kind of fragmented all your communities on all these different places. So I think that's one of the like the biggest challenge right now. And all our discussions, I think we have kind of evolved a kind of the ethos that we don't want to like compete directly with all these different social media platforms. We kind of want to bring them all together, and that's why I see a lot of tweets and Facebook posts, Telegram messages on discussions. And the next thing we're gonna do is make sure that tribes articles show up well, Minds articles show up nicely on the platform, and just kind of be like an aggregator instead of trying to be one more. So yeah.
Yeah, so I actually, that's one thing I really think Discussions app has an advantage of, like, so from my experience as a tribe, I think we're trying to do something a little bit different, and so we do actually check posts
Yeah.
to try to make sure that they're original content, because it's a whole tokenomics issue, but we don't, I mean, as a writer myself,
Yeah.
right, I don't really want someone posting my article on Discussions app and then getting tipped like 1,000 at most for something that they didn't write. But however, I've got no issues if someone were to take my article and post a link on Discussions app and then that person gets likes. So I think that's a really big advantage that you guys have, is you're more oriented along the lines of like bringing valuable content to the community, and you're much more open than that, right? Like, whereas from a tribe perspective, we're trying to keep the feeds, you know, more in lines of like higher value content just for content creators. So tribe gets a lot of flack for that, actually, to be 100% honest. It's like, I posted my post like 10 minutes ago and I've been waiting for like 30 minutes, and it's just like, well, yeah.
In the beginning as well. Like, come on, like why is my post keep getting rejected? I'm getting like so frustrated. But I think you're right. I think there's a place for all the different social media platforms. Like Tribe, I think again, you guys have a much more strict selection criteria. But again, the output is that it's much higher quality, higher word count content. And obviously you guys will be rewarding tribe tokens for that. For discussions, like a tip is just a tip. Like if you post, doesn't matter if you post a 10,000 word article or like a tweet, right? It's up to whatever people want to tip you.
Yeah.
So I actually see, and I hope this won't get you into like legal trouble. Like Tribe is more like a publisher in that sense, where like you gather articles, you go to them, you have your editors. It goes through that pipeline, and the outcome is like a fully, an article that the platform endorses essentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. But like you said, it is hard to get like a lot of projects to post, double post, because I mean that's the gold standard right now for most crypto related projects is Medium, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's not tokenized, that's where projects like to go, just because they have like such a big following. But like if you look at something like Chirp, like they did the same thing, like a very similar thing. That they allow people to bring content that they feel is valuable, and you can like it and post it up. I mean, like it's
I think
their intentions for it were brilliant. I mean, no different than Discussions, except for the fact that Discussions allows longer form content as well, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say actually, when you asked me which social media platforms I was using, I was using Chirp quite a bit, just because that friction, like initially, is a bit hard to get on because you do have to download a Links wallets, and you do have to get a Links account. But if once you get over that initial hurdle, using Chirp was one of the easiest blockchain social media experience I have had. So I don't know what they're going right now. With Links Chain moving to Proton, but I hope they keep up the project. Again, like I think Kurt is he's a great UI UX designer. He's just a great designer in general. And I think I was rooting for that platform. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's too bad we can't show it because they I think they're in the I'm not really sure, but I think they're in the process of moving over to Proton Chain or updating that. But yeah, I would agree. Like the onboarding was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Should we have a look at some of these platforms?
Yeah, let's do that.
I can share my screen. Maybe I'll pull up. Um, well, you should probably do this, but it's here, so I'll do it. I'll pull up this one first. Let's give her a go. So, well, yeah. So actually, yeah, the top post of the matter is up for discussion.
Yeah.
April 19th show with Fred and Pixios and Cypherglass. So I think that's a really interesting element that you've brought to Discusions.app, where you do kind of a weekly, special guest type of interview.
Yeah. So I mean, like our slogan for discussion is to be the home of token communities, right? Like that's what we want to be. We want to be a platform where all these different projects come together and interact with their audience. And I think a huge part of that is making these contents available. I understand like not all these projects have the extra manpower capable of producing podcasts, producing YouTube content. And I'm someone who I've done that for a very long time. I produced written content before, and I started produce video content a year back. And I just like talking about like this stuff. Like it's great because when I go reach out to Fred or whatever, they're busy people, right? They're the project founders, and maybe they don't have an hour to talk about their project. But if I get them on an interview, they get to chat, we get to chat, and he get a piece of content that could go out to his community that everyone could enjoy. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I I would agree, and I mean I think across most of the space, people are pretty receptive to going out and talking to other people, whether it be for articles or videos or podcasts or things like that. But especially in EOS, the people, that are, running the EOS projects, they're just really nice people. Like they're always happy to sit down and talk to you about what they're interested in. I mean, sometimes it's even over my head, like, so, but yeah, I really like this platform. I mean, it's just, I think it's really easy and really well organized. I mean, by hashtags and stuff like that. I mean, is there anything that you wanted to add? I mean, it's your platform.
Yeah, so we're looking to implement a lot of UI changes coming, and this is from from making observations of all the different social media blockchains. So I think we're gonna have a pretty nice redesign coming. The different right now, the only thing you could do with tokens is to tip them, but that's gonna change. We want the token part be a lot more present, right? And it's not just Atmos tokens. Right now we have our partners, Blockbase, Pummel, Boy, and MPT. Right, those are 4 other tokens we support in addition to Atmos as well as EOS. So we're looking to implement what's coming up a ambassador program. So this is actually, you will be able to use your token on discussions to boost your posts, but not on the platform itself, but on the social media platforms that are connected to it. So the first one we're going after is Twitter. So you could actually, if you're ambassador, if you're a project founder, you could make a post, you put in some tokens, and then when someone shares that post on Twitter, they actually get a little bit of token reward. So it's again, like our goal is not to be just like a singular closed social media platform. It's kind of branch out and try to connect to all these different social media platforms. And Twitter is one of the first ones that we're starting with.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I really like that idea, and I think it's it's good on a lot of levels. I mean, to actually get in this postmodern social age where we're implementing blockchain and people are looking at like SEO, things like that. If you can actually get rewarded just for sharing something of value, I think that's great too. So, so you guys are implementing a bunch of other different projects. Are those projects that just come to you and say, look, we really like what you're doing on Discussions, and we want to join your crew of supported tokens? Is that how that comes about?
Usually we reach out to them. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of thinking into what makes sense, which project it makes sense to bring onto the platform. And this is not to say like we are excluding certain communities and whatnot. It just see like if there is any synergy that makes sense, because we can't support everything, right? There's a lot of different stuff happening on EOS, and we just kind of have to pick and choose the partners that will complement us the most. So
Yeah, I mean, and I'm a big fan of that model. I think when I publish OX, for example, like even though they're not on EOS, I really like them for the simple reason that they offer multiple tokens on the platform, right? So I think from a tokenomics perspective, it's a really good ideology, right? They've got their partners, and they can be rewarded in certain tokens. But yeah, and the onboarding process in Discussions I thought was just amazing. I mean, it's there's some onboarding platforms that are really quite difficult, but in my personal opinion, I mean, Discussions and Chirp. Okay, so Tribe's in there as well, but Tribe's a little bit of a different fish. But in terms of things that are completely on chain, I would say Discussions and Chirp are probably the easiest platforms out there to log into, right? I mean, with Discussions, you don't even have to really have an EOS wallet. You can just go through that initial phase of, registering. I think you guys call it a brain key or something like that. And of course, to make sure you save your key. But even when you sign out and you log back in, I mean, my brain key is remembered. So I think you guys did a really good job with that. And Chirp as well. I mean, we were chatting before, but Chirp is probably one of the easiest onboarding to crypto ever. I mean, you don't even know that you're in it. So yeah, so we can go on to Tribe now. I mean, well, the main screen, which is kind of your introduction screen. I said it before, it's a little bit of a different kettle of fish for the simple reason that the posts, unlike Discussions or unlike Chirp, they're not actually on the blockchain. There is a blockchain component that is the wallet, which is used for voting or staking or things like that. But different people have different ideas. Like, does it really need to be on the blockchain? Well, I don't personally think everything needs to be on the blockchain, but I can tell you it did save us during the EOS times of congestion, because
yeah,
you could still log in and use the platform for posting and commenting and things like that. So
yeah. I mean, I just want to add, like, the EDOS thing really do us off too, because again, like, we were on chain, and our old model was actually you have to have an EOS account in order to use it, and that, like, I think you're right. That part made us reconsider, like, how we want to operate the platform. So we moved to Unify ID, which is still on chain, but it's kind of like a secondary layer with a account system rather than relying on the EOS native EOS account system, because we can't manage the users' ramps and resources for them, and it just doesn't make sense for the application to go down when the network is congested. So
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Why don't you go? I talked about Discussions, so give me your honest thoughts on Tribe. Let's do it.
I think I have a newfound appreciation for Tribe, because you guys do have like a constant pipeline of content. Like, people would go to Tribe and they could, if they create a really good article, they have some certainty like, okay, I might get rewarded for this. Whereas with Discussion, that's not the case, right? It's very much like, okay, well, if you like the content, give them a tip. So I do think like the reward model and Tribe is better. I think you guys have a lot more similarity to actually Everpedia, even though you guys don't really compete in that same space, where there is a process of vetting and making sure the content is good before it gets onto the platform. So again,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a very much like a publisher type deal.
Yeah, we, like I said, sometimes we get a lot of flack for that from people who really want decentralization. But for me as a writer, like personally, like that's one of the reasons I left places like Facebook, is because I just don't need to see pictures of people eating food that I'm not going to eat or things like that, right? And the feeds, they get so backed up with all of this stuff. So that's like, there's a few platforms that are really good because you can search by category, right? Or like even mainstream Twitter wise, you can like different things, but not all of those platforms are like that. So, and we have a really nice small community, but they like to engage in the comments and things like that, which I think is really cool. Mostly, blockchain agnostic, but not completely, that way there's some political posts and some project posts and things like that. So yeah, I think it was a really well built platform, and again, really easy to register for. Just go on, pick a username, sign in with your email, and you're in. I mean, some glitches with the wallet sometimes here and there, or things like that, but for the most part, it's pretty smooth. And of course, the staff is really kind and helpful.
Of course,
So,
yeah. And you guys
yeah.
is ahead of us. So we still got a number one request so far: have dark mode, have dark mode. So we
Yeah,
get
dark mode. Dark mode is huge, right? Like I don't know why dark mode is so massive. I guess it's just
yeah, number one request all the time. Have dark mode, have dark mode. So okay, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I met you because I like to cross post a lot of my articles that I write on Tribe, or even articles that other people write on Tribe. I often post them on discussions, projects, and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna I guess the the other one that we talked about in that article. So the three were tribe, discussions, and Discentium. So may as well move on to Discentium. What are your thoughts on Discentium?
Um, I mean, it's still very bare bone, to be honest. I think the Centium is, if I'm correct, I think it's from one of the great mass guys that's behind the project. So obviously they build a lot of great technology, and I don't see the Centium being any different. Um, but I think they are still a little too simple. I mean, it's the same criticism that we get at discussions, whereas we are just a discussions form with tipping, and that's what the Centium is. They are just a medium with tipping. So I'm interested to see how it evolves. But right now, it's nice. It's a nice medium alternative on the chain, on the blockchain, obviously. But other than that, there isn't really much to say.
Yeah, so you know what I really like about Discentium, to be honest, is I think they do something that is quite unique in the space. I mean, um, because of the way that EOS runs, you need net and you need CPU to be able to perform any action, right? And so when you post a post, if I'm not mistaken, on Discentium, it uses some of your CPU. However, when you decide to take that post down, they give you that CPU back.
Oh,
So I think that's like really kind of cool. I mean, that you can kind of, because I mean, if you post something on a lot of these other platforms, you just put it up, right? Like if it's on chain, you got to use your CPU to put it up, and that's it. The CPU is gone. But it's almost like you're hosting your article on there with the CPU, and then when you pull your article back, if I'm not mistaken, it's a little bit complicated, but you get that CPU back. So I quite like that aspect of it. I think that's quite an interesting way to think about it.
okay. I didn't know that actually. I didn't know that. But
So
I still think it's such a small difference to the end user that it's a tough selling point. Um, Maybe to the EOS community that really wants to make posts, and many of them. But I think CPU again is something that the developer has to worry about. It shouldn't be up on the end user to even have to think about that. And
yeah, well, we've seen lots of platforms that, for example, Karma switched over to Wax for that very reason, right? Because they just couldn't cover it. But yeah, I mean, I just think that different projects are going to be thinking about different ways to all bring it into the fold personally. So, well, I don't know. Do we go to I guess we can go to the golden child next. What's your take on Steam? It's not really EOS, but
well, I tell you what, I mean, I got into crypto 2013, and that wasn't because of Steam, right? That was just because I was in New York City and the Bitcoin center was right next to Wall Street. And that was where my school was. So, I kind of bumbled in. But in the second bull run, I think it was like 2000, was it 2015 or 2016? It was leading up to like the height, that's 2017. Steam has actually really got me into learning about blockchain technology and really learning about the alternatives to Bitcoin that exists out there. So I think Steemit is a it was an innovation at the time in that it brought in a lot of people that didn't care about Bitcoin, that didn't care about whatever, into this cryptocurrency and blockchain space. And I don't think they get enough credit for it. And I think the cryptocurrency community in general kind of give them a lot of flag for maybe even doing that exact same thing. It's like they want to like, okay, Bitcoin is this financial revolution, peer-to-peer cash, and nothing else. This is like the hardcore Bitcoin people, right? Whereas Steam brought in a lot of casual users that are like, okay, we like, being able to post on stuff and get rewarded for it. We want to make sure that our post doesn't go down when the platform does go down. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for what the Steam team did. But obviously, with the recent hostile takeover things, I don't know. I don't. I think there's gonna be a tough future for Steemit.
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm not really a fan of Steam for a lot of reasons. And I'm trying to give it another shot. But my biggest issue with it is it's just like you said, when it first came out, it was really innovative, but it's just a really complicated platform to understand, especially if you don't know anything about crypto. I mean, they give you 5 different keys that you have to manage, that you have to download. I mean, you've got a posting key, you've got a master key, all of these keys. Like, it's just really complicated to understand when you register, when you join, when you sign up. I mean, if you look at something like some of the other platforms that we've talked about, like, I mean, there's none of that. And even if you look at like Decentium, it's, you have to have an EOS wallet to be able to use it, but getting an EOS wallet is becoming easier and easier and easier, right? Like, you don't have to have all of this. And my secondary kind of issue with Steam as well is that I think they really need to update their posting interface. Like,
Mhm.
when you post, they give you 2 really interesting boxes. Like, it shows you what it looks like on screen, but you have to drop like all of the images, all of the links. You've got to like highlight them and click them all, just to be able to get that post operational. And it's a really big kind of like time suck. Like, it's going to take you quite a long time to post those things. I mean, I know from posting longer content articles on discussions, or the writing that I've done on Tribe, it's much more user friendly. I mean, you just copy a post that you've written, you drop it in. There might be a couple little glitches that you have to fix up, but you're done. You don't have to link all of these links individually and do all of this stuff. And I've got like some hang-ups on it from the very beginning. But like I said, I'm not giving up on it. I think um, well, it's hard to say, what happens after the hostile takeover. Because, well, now I guess to move on, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same content, really. If we go over to Hive, we've got the Hive blockchain, which as you can see, it looks pretty much the exact same. so.
Yeah, but Peak, the other interface is a lot better. I think they've written like that. Well, I want to go back to Steam just a little bit, just because it's like an OG in the space, right? Like,
Yeah, sure. We can go back to Steam.
no, I mean,
But
like that topic of like Steam. Yeah, like they're the originator of, like, you can't. It's difficult to compare to tell people what we're doing without bringing up Steam. Like, even for Try, I'm certain that it's like, okay, well, you publish and you get paid in cryptocurrency. Like, oh, so you're building something like Steam, right? That's like one of the first things that come up. Like, that should show like how much influence they still have. And also think like, I don't know, I feel like the Steam team really squandered a lot of opportunities. Having been in the Steam community, there was so much innovation from the community itself that if they were just to adopt it and call it, integrate it, I think they would have been doing very, very well. And I'm bringing that up because I'm seeing sort of a similar thing happening in the EOS ecosystem. I know this is kind of outside of realm a little bit, but there's so much innovation from the community, and we're not seeing like the big player, which is Block One, adopting it. A lot of times, what happens actually build their own solution, a competing solution to that, instead of just, okay, well, whatever the community is doing might not be perfect, but it is innovative, and we could start using it today. So I'm just worried that, hopefully they don't repeat the same mistake. Hopefully they see that there's talent in the ecosystem and they're able to tap into it. So yeah, just
yeah,
hope.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, because I completely agree. Like when it comes to Steam, it's funny because you're right. Like when other people look at other social platforms, I mean, that was, the driving standard. But what's ironic for me is how much flack EOS gets because of Steam. Like people on other platforms or other chains, they'll just be like, hating on DPoS or hating on something else, and it's just like, oh well, Steam, that's Block One, that's EOS, that's Dan's project, and realistically, I mean, it's not, and in a lot of ways, it does show like the power of a lot of things. I mean, I guess the jury's out on whether you believe, anyone in particular believes on how the whole Tron Steam It thing went down, but it does show that, if people in the community that hold weight aren't, happy with something that's happening, you don't lose your job, you just, move to a different office.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
yeah.
think the Steam Hive thing is super interesting. I hope it works out well for Hive, maybe even and to a lesser extent to Steam, because I do think it's healthy to have competition. But I think the worst case scenario, or the best case scenario, depending on how you look at it, is that they both fail, right? Just because there's so much overlap in the community and the content. If it's like a war of nutrition rather than innovation, then it's gonna end very badly for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't really comment that much upon it, to be honest, because it could go so many different ways, like, it's, but yeah, I personally, I don't use Hive, not because I don't want to, but just because of where I'm based, it's really difficult for me to buy Hive tokens. And so that's like another kind of one of my griping points with Hive. And I don't think it was that way back in the day with Steam. I think you could post on Steam without having tokens when I first joined. I mean, I must have been able to or something. But
Yeah,
now with Hive, you need tokens to be able to post. And I guess, that's par for the course in, blockchain, that we want to be
no,
able to use the
no,
tokens. But
I would disagree with that. I think that's the like I have heard her excuses like this way too many times. You, as a developer, you should ensure that the end user experience is as good as it can get. If discussion is able to pay for resources, like okay, it might not be perfect. If we get like an influx of 1 million users tomorrow, our site will go down. Like we don't have enough resources to pay for that, but we don't have that at the moment. And I'm pretty certain that there are solutions available with like the rec system. We could run out more.
mm,
So I just don't see. I see all this as like excuses that developers are using to kind of wiggle out of their responsibility, which is just to develop a great product for the end user.
yeah, so I would say I really do agree with you, because if you're expecting people to come from other ecosystems in the crypto sphere, or you're expecting them to come, even from like non-crypto areas, from non-crypto social platforms into this, but you're forcing them to go and buy a token, to be able to use that token to be able to open up the blockchain just to make a simple post. I think you're writing off a lot of valuable content and valuable users. So um, but like you said, the thing with Hive is there are quite a few different platforms in there that can be used. There's Hive, there's Peak D, which you mentioned. You said you liked that interface better, actually.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what is it about Peak D that you think is better than Hive?
Well, I would say one thing I don't like about them first, which is their landing page. I think their landing page is horrendous. It's just like a bunch of boxes. I'm not sure. Can you show your screen?
Yeah, I just pulled it up. Sorry. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the landing
Yeah.
page. I think it's horrendous. It's but after you click into like I don't know topics or feeds or whatever,
Yeah,
uh,
it's good. That's
yeah,
good. That's a good place to start. Sure.
you can see it's a much nicer UI. I think this is probably like what they should make their landing page to be, if I'm to be honest. And then yeah, they just kind of like it's not drastically different from Steemit, but it is a refinement of what the Steemit interface is. So
Yeah, actually, you're right. Like I've been in here before, but I haven't used it that much. But I forgot about this. But you're completely right. I think this is a lot more appealing to the user than that kind of small box text post format where you just have a million posts on the first page. So I do see what you're saying about that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we cover everything we need to cover about.
Um,
Sorry.
yeah. So what else can we talk about? Where do we want to head now? You've got some other platforms that you use on
So
EOS.
yeah, so we have Karma and Murmur, and I kind of want to lump them in the same bucket because I think they
Okay.
have similar token economics. You know, I would even say maybe like a similar user base. So yeah, so Karma actually evolved a little bit. It used to be like they want to be like the Twitter of EOS, I think. Now they kind of positioning themselves as the Instagram of EOS. At least that's what the founder, that's his, you know, pitch to the community. Whereas Murmur is becoming a little bit more like Twitter on EOS. But again, they have a similar token economic system as Steemit, where the more stake you have, you upvote more. Karma, when it first came out, I just thought it was kind of brilliant in that they were trying to beat Block One to the punch, because Block One announced they're gonna build a social media platform. Everyone assumed it's just kind of like a clone of Steemit on EOS. And then Karma came out and said, okay, well, we're going to take exactly what Steam is doing, replicate that, and just put it on EOS. So that was their spew in the beginning. But obviously they moved to like Wax. Maybe they have some interesting integrations going on. Like obviously Wax is like for games and NFTs. Like if they're not looking into that area for growth, I think they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, so I think Karma's got some really interesting things that they've got planned to come out. So definitely NFTs, according to Dallas, is on the mark to be able to offer NFTs within Karma, which is really cool. That one of the things that actually annoys me about Karma, to be honest, is I can't post links there.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking into changing that. I'm not sure why it was that way, but they will be changing that. And also, that there's no timeline on it, but eventually they will be rolling out a desktop version,
Oh, okay.
which I think is really cool and really necessary. I mean, most of these platforms are workable on both desktop and mobile smartphones or tablets, but Karma is kind of the only one that you can only use with an app, right? So that for me will change everything if I can actually sit down in front of my computer and write a post, like a longer content post or something like that. I think they're kind of exciting. And for me, Murmur, yeah, I would have put them in the same category maybe, just like you did, but for me, Murmur, I don't really know, like that the whole transition to the Telos blockchain, I think it could have been a lot smoother. Like if you look at how easy it was for Karma to transfer over to Wax, I mean, it was like you said, it was zero effort to the end user. I mean, you opened up your account one day and you were on EOS. You opened up your account the next day and it said, "Oh, okay, here's your Wax blockchain, public and private key. You now have your tokens here. You collect your rewards. You check Blocks.io under your Wax name, same name as the account that you registered on Karma with on EOS, and it's all there." And it like that to me was what really made me look at the Karma team and say, wow, this is just amazing. Like that was the most seamless transition that I've seen anywhere in the whole crypto space. It was really brilliant. So
Yeah. And again, like I think that's how things should be. Like unless you're like really appealing to like hardcore EOS people, it doesn't matter what blockchain your application is running on to the end user. Like if I think that's going to be less and less the case as we see the blockchain space mature more and more. People won't care if your application is running on Ethereum or EOS or Telos or whatever. It just has to work and it just has to do the things that the user wants it to do, which is how you build an application, is how you develop an end product. So yeah, I think as blockchain mature, I think the only difference would be like I still think the liquidity bridges are still not there. Once we get there, once like if I could have an EOS token and I could exchange it instantly for a Wax token, or not even a Wax, because like that's already in the works. Like I don't know, Ethereum for like Ethereum application that I could use. Again, the blockchain is not going to matter. It should fade into the background. Like I want to do something on the application, and I want to get it done, and it doesn't matter what blockchain is running on.
yeah, I completely agree. I hope that's not so far off, and I think when all that comes together, especially things like social media on these, you know, blockchain applications are just going to, you know, explode, because if it becomes that easy, I mean, well, essentially, you know, that's kind of what Libra and well, Reddit, I guess, is kind of exploring, is the idea of just putting, you know, their existing users onto the blockchain. I'm not really sure in the case of Facebook if it's not really decentralized. Maybe we'll have to do a special episode about that, because there was an interesting article I read about it today, and it's a big topic. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like if you look at like social media that people use around the space. I mean, up until recently, people weren't getting paid to post on Facebook, or they weren't getting money, you know, from their Instagram posts, or Medium is another big one. I mean, people get claps. I mean, it's a pat on the back, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're delivering good content. But you know, this whole tokenization of content, no matter how you decide to tokenize it, whether you're tokenizing it, you know, the value of the content for the content creators themselves, or whether you're tokenizing the value of the content for, you know, the information that those people bring to you. Like there's multiple strains of how to do this, but I mean, that's a really new idea. I mean, EOS is 2 years old. I mean, Steam is maybe 3 years old, and like you said, Steam kind of carved the path for a lot of this kind of development. I mean, so yeah, one of the other things that I do, as you know, is I work for Uplift Nation, and so yeah, we just actually created our educational and social hub. Have you checked it out yet, Jack?
Oh, very briefly, very briefly.
So, but that's the thing, right? We don't have a token model, right? But you know, we've got some tutorials and things like that on here, and I think eventually we will be adding, you know, some sort of incentivization scheme. I mean, but we just essentially want to, you know, create content that people can use, you know, something that maybe a farmer in Africa can use to, you know, improve his, you know, agricultural system, or you know, maybe somebody in their teens in Venezuela can use to be able to like learn how to use technology, or those types of things. So I think a lot of those kind of ideas, sometimes we get stuck in this cryptosphere, which might actually hurt us when it comes to outside users, because I'd say probably 90% of the articles on Trybe, for example, they're all crypto, right? I mean, discussions. Do you guys have many on crypto articles?
We probably 90% is EOS, so we're even more niche. So
fair enough. That's actually one of the other things I kind of like about Discentium, is they have a blockchain section, but they've got all of these other sections too, but I haven't checked it out. So but yeah, I guess we're kind of running up on our time limit here. I mean, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to?
Oh, but I love the fact that you brought up Reddit is gonna integrate Ethereum, and you know how Facebook is launching Libra. I think that's be a fantastic topic to cover next. We kind of ran a bit on like what we know, like EOS ecosystem, but I think, you know, for most people, that's where like if that happens, if Reddit integrates Ethereum, that's gotta be their first interaction with anything that resembles a blockchain social media platform. So I think that's gonna be very, very interesting to kind of what would be the implications of that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like that in itself is a huge topic, right? I mean, because there's so many aspects to it, right? Like the people who don't know anything about blockchain, like my parents who use Facebook every day because it's just like simple. But that first time it was difficult, right? But I mean, they don't want to. They don't care whether it's on the blockchain or not, right? I mean, like if Libra comes out and everything's on the blockchain, I mean, it doesn't change anything for them. I mean, right? And then you've got these the crypto sphere, who is just like, no, everything has to be decentralized, everything has to be, you know, permissionless, everything has to be, and it's just like I always kind of wonder. So it'll be interesting, like that could bring in a lot of stuff. Maybe actually, you know, in the next week or two, we should really sit down and talk about that, talk about some of these major platforms that are on other chains, and even put a call out to the community right now. I mean, what are your thoughts of Reddit? You know, bringing in Ethereum into the blockchain and all of these users, or Facebook Libra. I mean, there's been lots of ups and downs, and maybe they can comment below this post, and we can collect some questions and answers and viewpoints, and then we can, throw them out there. What do you think about that?
I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
So yeah. But I guess our ramblings are probably done, but it was really nice to talk to you. I mean,
Yeah. If nothing else, we both enjoyed this conversation. And hopefully this was enjoyable for the listeners.
It's got 2 likes at least.
Exactly. But yeah, if you are still watching to this very end, you must be someone who's very interested in blockchain social media platforms, just like us. And we invite you back for our next session, which should be sometime next week. And we talk about things like Reddit, Reddit's Ethereum integration, Facebook Libra, and how that relates to voice, which we haven't really talked about at all in this this session. I just realized.
Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of options. I mean, we mostly focused on EOSIO platforms, but that's not to say that EOSIO is the only place, right? I mean, there's some great platforms on Ethereum already that are up and running, and all of these different spaces across the board. So I think it's a really competitive market out there.
Yeah, most people don't realize that. Most, like, for them, again, like, their go-to is just Steam it. Like, that's the only one they know. So, but yeah, lots of competitors, lots of competition, but that just means innovation, right? So.
Right. Yeah, so let's end this by going back to taking one more quick gander, if I can find it here, of your baby. And give everyone a reminder that right there, the top post. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So every Sunday we host a Discord podcast, and Jimmy's going to be joining us on Sunday as well. And we have 2 special guests that will be there, which is Fred from PixEOS and Adriana of Cypherglass. So we're going to be covering some of the topics that, in the EOS ecosystem, but as well as what they're doing in their projects. PixEOS just released a gallery, and Cypherglass is doing some great work behind the scenes that may not get a lot of publicity. So we kind of want to highlight those as well. So join us on our Discord. There'll be a link in the post, and yeah.
So hopefully we'll get some, nice interaction in the comments below on some great questions that we can ask. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Yes. Okay, just catch you guys next time. Ciao, ciao.
Later.